We were going to cover some health information today, and as we're waiting for our guests to call in, I did want to mention that we do have a diabetes formula that's just come out. Diabetes seems to be a major problem in the United States, all over the globe really, and as popular demand has dictated, we have developed a formula for you made from the tried and true white cedar berry. And American Indians used to use it, and so did old-timey herbalists, so it's got a lot of testing behind it. So the white cedar berries, or the juniper berries, are hard to get, so it took us a while to get some certified organic, grown to tilt standard variety, because we're very picky about that. The quality is important, or you're not going to get the results, and we want you to get results. And you can regulate your blood sugars without insulin when using this particular berry. This particular berry is indigenous to the western part of the United States, dry, arid regions, and is cousin to the blue juniper berry, but is not exactly the same. Regular juniper berries you use for urinary tract and bladder issues, but the white juniper is... I believe our guest is here, Randall Fitzgerald.
I am here.
Hi, welcome to the show. Randall is an investigative journalist and author, most recently of the book, The 100-Year Lie, How Food and Medicine Are Destroying Your Health. Also investigative reporter for the legendary columnist Jack Anderson. He's also written for the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and over 100 articles for Reader's Digest. And he's also authored 7 previous books. Now, The 100-Year Lie, How Food and Medicine Are Destroying Our Health, was thoroughly researched, and it's an expose on the synthetic belief system, how those chemicals are polluting our physical bodies, compromising our immune systems, and threatening our very survival. And welcome to the show, Randall.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes, and your book is a fabulous book. I've had an opportunity to delve into it most recently, because we talked prior on a different show that I do. Tell us a little bit about, tell our audience about the 100-Year Lie. What is the synthetic belief system?
Well, it began 100 years ago in 1906 when the U.S. Congress passed the first Pure Food and Drug Act that created the Food and Drug Administration. And from that point forward, we were given assurances that this government agency and this legislation would protect the purity and the safety of our foods and medicines. But what happened from that point forward is that increasing amounts to our foods and our drugs, the whole processed foods industry revolution began, and preservatives and colorings and artificial sugars and artificial everything was added step by step. And in the case of medicines, we saw more and more the pharmaceutical drug industry creating lots of new laboratory synthetic chemicals. And so we just, especially after World War II, began to see an acceleration to the point that we are today. And that inspired me to write this book because I saw that there was a lot of evidence, certainly in my circle of friends and within my family group, of people at younger and younger ages coming down with illnesses and diseases that a few decades ago seemed to only afflict people much older. And that made me curious, and I started finding connections to all of these synthetic chemicals being added to our diets and our medicines.
Now, in your opinion, why do you suppose there was this shift from organic to synthetic? Is it purely economical, you think?
Well, initially in 1906, I went back and looked at the testimony before Congress that created the Food and Drug Administration, and there was a lot of testimony that the number one problem at that time seen in food was bacteria and problems with contamination of one sort or another, germs. It was called the germ theory, and the only solution that was offered at that time to combat germs in general were synthetic chemicals created in laboratories. And that's the point at which the crash programs began among food processors and the emerging pharmaceutical industry, as well as chemical companies, to create lots of different chemical combinations that would kill germs. That was the initial reasoning behind it, and of course it's expanded considerably since then. Germs are no longer public enemy number one, but we still have synthetic chemicals, and that better living through chemistry sort of motto that the DuPont company created in the early 20th century has become sort of a mantra for most of the industry in this country.
Well, you really can't make something 100% bacteria-free. That's totally impossible, because you can only be as bacteria-free as good as your scientific equipment will show you.
Yes, that's true.
And I often jest that, hypoallergenic is basically just a marketing term.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get all the bacteria out of the cosmetics either. So they do the best they can, but probably 30 years from now, when they got better microscopes, they're going to see what they considered clean today is not clean.
Interestingly, on that particular point, over the last 5 years, I looked at what sorts or what types or categories of products have really exploded in numbers over the last 5 years. And the answer was antibacterial products.
Right.
Products, not just soaps anymore, but lotions and shampoos, and go down a long list of antibacterial chemicals that are now in the marketplace. And interestingly, in that connection, the U.S. Geological Survey, in its studies of groundwater and rivers and streams over the last 5 years, has also found an increasing level of these antibacterial chemicals appearing in our water supplies, and the result has been a direct impact on fish populations, amphibian populations that come in contact with these antibacterial agents.
Well, interesting you mentioned that, because I did report on a previous show that a lot of the major cities, their water supplies, even though they tend to be within normal limits of chemical contaminants, but they're seeing more and more, like you just mentioned, the antibacterial agents plus pharmaceuticals, antidepressants especially.
Yes,
so,
Prozac, Ritalin, the whole range are showing up in our water supplies. And how this works in terms of how it gets back into our bodies, whether we start out by taking Prozac or Ritalin or not, doesn't really seem to matter anymore. Our wastewater treatment plants are not designed to eliminate these chemicals once the water is released back into the environment. So the water's back in the environment. It contains this entire range of chemicals, not just pharmaceuticals, but the antibacterial chemicals and chemicals out of our food and growth hormones and on and on. So then it's present in our water supply. Then our water purification plants draw the water back up, and these plants are not designed either to eliminate these chemicals. So then the tap water in municipal water systems is recycling all of these chemicals, and we absorb them in our bodies in a variety of ways. If we don't drink tap water directly, it can be absorbed through the fumes of hot showers. It can be absorbed as a result of using a dishwasher and then opening it, and you know how the cloud of fumes and steam comes out. Well, those are all chemical agents. We can absorb it in a variety of ways. So we're recycling all of these chemicals at seemingly very small amounts, sometimes like 1 part per billion in the water. But the problem with those sorts of measurements is that because we absorb these chemicals in our bodies and we store it in our body fat and in our body organs, there's a bioaccumulation process that is occurring, not only within, for instance, fish that absorb all of these chemicals. Then we eat the fish and we absorb once again a whole another body burden dose that way, but also the bioaccumulation just in our body tissues from these indirect sources, like through tap water. So over